Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening. I appreciate it's already probably been a long day for most of you, so we'll make sure that we stick to our time frame today. We'll have about 50 minutes on the presentation, and perhaps we'll have a few minutes at the end for questions and answers. As Ashley says, if you could type in your questions into the chat box, that would be wonderful, and I'll attempt to answer as many of them as I can today, and the ones I can't, we can circle back to you. So just before we dive into our presentation, I'd like to start with a small apology to all of you who registered for the February event. Please accept my apologies. That event was cancelled on the same day as it was scheduled because we received a phone call from my mother-in-law. They live in South Africa, advising my father-in-law was gravely ill and in hospital. So my wife and I traveled the very same day, and very sadly, we lost him a few days later. And that was the reason why I had to cancel the event at the very last minute. So please accept my apologies, but here we are today. So with no further ado, let's dive into our presentation today. So what we're going to be talking about is how do we protect our life's work, and what is the importance of knowing your numbers? So what are you going to know today? We have 4 key points that we're going to discuss. And at the end of the session today, I'll give you a summary as well. So point number 1, retirement planning. So surely when it comes to retirement planning, the important thing is that we know the value of our assets. So we know the value of the pension funds, the investment funds, the properties, etc., and we project those forward until date of retirement. And then we build in what is the income that you'd like, which is surely should be inflation proofed. And how long will that money last for? And what action needs to be taken today in order for us to ensure that you have a comfortable retirement? Moving on to point number 2. When it comes to selling your business, what's important is that we get the structure of your business correct today, or we take action today towards getting the structure correct for the time we do sell. Why? Because if we get the structure correct, you'll pay the least amount of tax when that day comes. If the structure is not corrected between now and the time you come to sell your business, then you'll pay more taxes. So our objective is legitimately and correctly to get the maximum value for ourselves and our family and pay the least amount of taxes legitimately. I'd like to talk to you about wills and trusts and the importance of estate planning. Clearly, it's very important to ensure that we document what we want to happen to our financial tools and who we want to protect when that day comes, when we are no longer here. So I'm going to talk to you about the importance of wills, trusts, and estate planning. And then finally, how about leaving a legacy? How about ensuring that we leave the right money to the right people at the right time? So when we are no longer here, our loved ones can live with dignity or continue to live with dignity. So this is what we're going to be talking about in our presentation today. So just before we move into the main body of our presentation, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about taxation. And we've got some statistics here directly from HMRC. And in the tax year 2019-20, the government collected £636 billion of taxes. But their expenditure, and the government calls it managed expenditure, was £881 billion. So we had a deficit of circa £245 billion in one tax year, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. In the following tax year, 2020-21, the government collected £584 billion. But they managed to expend £1,053 billion. So we've got nearly, well, over £400 billion, £430 billion of deficit. The pandemic deficit to the 31st of March 2021 has been £714 billion, let alone what's currently going on out there in the world that we are all supporting. Globally, we are supporting the humanitarian crisis that is happening in the Ukraine at the moment. So the current debt we have as a nation, as at the 31st of March 2021, and it's increased since then, was £2.2 trillion. That is 106% of our gross domestic product. And can I tell you why that is important that I share this slide with you today? I share this slide with you today because, let me just see, where do you think they're going to plug this gap? Where is this money going to come from? 95% of the electorate are the people that work for you and work for me. People who are on moderate incomes. They are 95% of the electorate. I do not think the government is going to seek to tax 95% of the electorate to fill this black hole. Who they will tax is the so-called wealthy, you and me. That's where they're going to get this money. So, when do you think we should plan? And if we fail to plan, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but this is ultimately what's going to happen. It's like throwing money out of the window. If we don't plan correctly, then this is what's going to happen to our money. And guess who's there to pick it up? The revenue will always want their share, and they will take as much as they possibly can if we don't take action. So what would we rather do? What we'd rather do is take the appropriate steps now and for the coming years in order that we can sleep like a baby. That's how we want to be. That's our ideal outcome. So when it comes to the subject of retirement planning, the most important thing is, having worked 30, 40, 50 years, we want to retire in a comfortable fashion. And how is it that we retire? How can we retire in a comfortable fashion? The way we can retire in a comfortable fashion is by knowing our numbers. And what are the important numbers that we need to know? And what assets need to be in the right place at the right time so you can draw the right income and pay, and once again, pay the least amount of tax and maximize your life's work. I'm going to show you a case study shortly that will highlight how we can do that for you. And so what are your needs when it comes to retirement? Well, what your needs are is you need to establish how much do you need as an income and ensure that that income grows with the cost of living. And where will that income come from? Which existing assets or savings? And where do I draw that income from? Which are the best places for me to draw? Do I draw that income from my pensions? Do I draw it from my ISAs? Do I draw it from my bond? How much rental income have I got? How much taxes am I paying across all of these things? How can I blend this income in order to pay legitimately the least amount of tax and draw the maximum income for myself and ensure that when we are no longer here, our spouses have sufficient income so that they can live or continue to live with dignity. So that's the important thing. These are the important questions we've established talking to our clients over. I've been doing this for 31 years now. So I've established these are the core things that my clients want answering. And so how do we establish these things? Well, the only way to establish these things is by doing a very detailed analysis, by drawing out from you, by asking you, what are all these assets that you have? And we have a very specific way of having you answer those questions for us in a strategic fashion, so you get everything out of your mind and we get it all plotted out correctly. We get it all analyzed correctly. And by doing so, we can then present to you a detailed cash flow of where is your life going to. So for the purposes of today, I've got a little case study here. And of course, the names have been changed, but this gives you an indication of the kind of work that we do on behalf of our clients for you to have confidence that you're going to have a comfortable retirement, or to give you the knowledge today that we're not quite on track and what actions do we need to take to get us on track. So Atul and Jalpa, married with 2 children. Atul's 56, Jalpa's 55. they've got 2 children, both of them studying to become pharmacists. So we don't know whether they're going to sell the business. Okay. And with that in mind, we've got extracted from them all the information we need to know. So they've got some money in premium bonds. They've got some stocks and shares ISAs. They've got various bank accounts. They've got some pension funds. They've got their property. They've got a small liability of the mortgage. And then they've got their business. So as you can see, this is a fairly simple one. For today's exercise, I wanted to present a simple case to you, but demonstrate the power of the advice. The reason why I wanted to present a simple case to you is because when you get into complex ones, you need a lot more time during a presentation time. So for today, we're just going to demonstrate a simple one so that you can get a feeling for how do we actually get these numbers down and what's the power of knowing these numbers. So we've also extracted from them what is their income. They've got small salaries and they've got a larger dividend, but they have a modest income. You can see they both have about a £51,000 income. There's their taxes. This is the income that they've got. And then we've analysed with them, what are their household expenditure? What do they need to run their home comfortably at this moment in time? So we've got that down. And what we find with Atul and Jalpa is that their income and expenditure is very, very similar. So there's not too much fat on the bone on this occasion. And what they want as a requirement is when they reach Atul 66, Jalpa 65th, they'd like £80,000 a year as a net income in retirement. But they actually only want that for about 19 years until they're 85, 84. And the reason is that during this period, just after retirement, for about just under 20 years, they'd like to travel a bit more, and maybe they'd like to help their children with what they think might be school fees and things of that nature. So they need a little bit more income. 20 years in, they think they probably need less of an income. And the reason is they've done all the things they wanted to do in terms of extensive traveling. As we get older, maybe we're not quite as fit and healthy as we once were to travel quite as much, but also they've helped as much as they can or as much as they want to with the grandkids. And now they just want to make sure they are comfortable. And for them, comfortable meant that they wanted to ensure the planning we had put in place for them ensured that they had enough income till Atul's 100th birthday. That's what they wanted to ensure. And they wanted to ensure that income was inflation proofed, because that's really important, as we all know, particularly with the cost of living being highlighted currently in the news. So with their current setup, there's the graph. What does it tell us? There's a period of time, the blue line, that continues to grow. They continue to fund the current sort of retirement plans or savings. And then they get to that point where Atul 65 and Jalpa 64, and now the money starts to run down. Why? Because they're starting to spend. And then they get to this crossover point. And look at all this time in the red. Now, that you can't recover from that at that point. You run out of money. Well, what are you going to do? What we need to do is to take some action. And the action that needs to be taken in order for their savings, their investments and the pensions not to run out at age 82 is for us to do some analysis for them. And what we did was we told Atul, you need to pay about another just under 28,000 more into your pension scheme. Jalpa, you need to pay a similar figure, and the company can pay. Remember their income and expenditure, they don't have too much money, but the company was making some money. It also had some cash reserves. So they started to pay more into the pension scheme. And what we've analysed is now they don't run out of money whatsoever. So you can see the benefit of detailed analysis. Firstly, understanding where are we today and putting some kind of idea together as to what do we want as an income in retirement. And then looking at, well, where will this actually get us? What we've currently got, where will it get us? And if it's not sufficient, then what action do we need to take? And that's what this whole couple of slides have presented to you. So let's move on to the next subject matter here. Selling your business. And what's important that we do when it comes to selling your business? Well, the first thing we need to try and establish is how much money will you get for your business today? I don't know what that could be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years time. I know pharmacy is going through a lot of changes, but we need to start with some indication of what do we think the business is worth today. And if we were to sell the business today, based on today's legislation, how much tax will I have to pay? And how much of the proceeds can we keep? And this is an important step to establish, because this also helps you understand, could I actually retire today? Do I need to work for another 5 years? Or actually, without having done this before, I could have perhaps retired 5 years ago or 10 years ago. We have a number of clients who retired 5 and 10 years ago because we did the detailed analysis. And they understood, I don't actually need to work. I've got ample assets and savings that I can call upon to give me a comfortable retirement income, and also sometimes make the gifts that we might want to do for our children or grandchildren. So why am I continuing to work? Because I know your life as a pharmacist has become very difficult. Not today, it's been going on for the last 10 years. It's become very difficult. So I'm finding, particularly with the pandemic, people are having to work even harder for the same money and sometimes less money. And people are thinking about selling, but they're just not sure where to start. So we can help you by analyzing all these things so you understand where you're at and which direction we need to go in. So what do we need to do prior to sell? Well, we've got to structure your business correctly. Why have we got to structure your business correctly? In order that we pay the least amount of tax to HMRC and we have the maximum amount of value from our life's work for ourselves and our family. Moving on to the next point, wills, trusts and estate planning. Why is wills, trusts and estate planning important? The reason why wills, trusts and estate planning are important is without a will or trust and or any estate planning, then you are leaving it for the government to make the decision as to how your estate is going to be distributed. And the second thing is the government will put their hand as deep into your pockets as they possibly can and extract the maximum amount of tax. Legitimately, it's very legitimate on their part if we fail to plan. So it's really important that we plan in order to eliminate the unnecessary taxes and pay the least amount of tax to HMRC and keep the maximum of our life's work for our loved ones. And so what are your needs in this area when it comes to inheritance tax planning? We need to know who's going to get our assets when we die. How much tax will our family pay? Do we consider that is fair? And what can we do to minimize that tax payment? I'm going to circle back for a second. Do we consider that it's fair? Now, I'm not going to give you a professional opinion because I think that's for you to make that decision, but I'm going to give you my personal opinion. I, like you, have ran a successful business for many years, and therefore I've paid my corporation taxes along the way. Also, I've been drawing a reasonable income. So my wife and I have paid all of our income taxes along the way. Now, the reality is, you and I probably draw more income than the average person does, because we are entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs take risk. And therefore, if they make a little more profit than the average person in the street, they have the right to spend it. But we contribute, entrepreneurs, we contribute significantly more tax than the 95% of people. And therefore, for me, my personal belief, that is inheritance tax is very unfair. Because when I invest my money in my ISAs or my investment bonds, or I give some gifts to my children, or I buy a property or whatever, this is all post-tax money. So I've already paid corporation tax, I've already paid income tax, I've already paid dividend tax, and now I'm investing my net money, and then when I die, I've got to pay tax on that again, and or capital gains tax during my lifetime. So I think the taxation system is a little bit unfair for us, the entrepreneurs, and that's why, for me, I think it's important that I minimize the inheritance tax payable legitimately, and perhaps you do too. So like we said earlier, why is it important to make a will? It's important to make a will to ensure the right money goes to the right people at the right time. And when somebody passes away, most of us are in an emotional time, and we don't want to have been left with a legal mess. Unfortunately, like my mother was nearly 30 years ago, when my father passed away, leaving my mother in a very comfortable position. Financially, he left her comfortable, but he left her in a very untidy manner because he didn't have a will, let alone trust. So he left her in a very uncomfortable position, no will, no trust, and therefore the legal fees were very expensive, as well as having to tidy up the estate at a difficult time. So this is one of the many reasons, there's many reasons to make a will, which I'm sure you know why these are, but these are the really powerful ones in my mind. Don't leave your family at an emotional time at risk of paying more money than they need to pay in legal fees, more inheritance tax than they should have paid, because if we had had a proper will and trust, we could have minimized that. And of course, that is a very distressing time to do all that as well. So what kind of things can we do in order to minimize the inheritance tax? What tools can we use to protect the inheritance tax, but also social impact? It's not a subject that people talk about a lot, but many of us are aware. Unfortunately, not all marriages are made for a lifetime nowadays. That's one social impact. So all the money that I might set aside for my kids, I don't want that all torn apart through a divorce. All the money that I might leave should I pass away to my wife and she makes an unfortunate decision. Maybe the second time round, she doesn't make quite a good decision as she did the first time round. And that ends in divorce. So then that's all going to be pulled apart. Let's look at a few examples, but just before we do that, what does a complete framework look like? Well, a complete framework looks like by protecting the value of your assets, giving gifts away at the right time, ensuring the life policies that we own are written in trust. That's such a simple but important thing to do. And that removes 40% inheritance tax. Checking that the existing pension assets we have, are they inheritance tax free? Because there are a number of pension assets that are not inheritance tax free, but could be if we do some clever work or careful work around it, some technical work around it to make the pension completely inheritance tax free. And then managing the residual estate, so we minimize the taxpayer. And of course, leaving a legacy. I think the worst scenario for any of us could be that we work hard, we hopefully have a good lifestyle as we're working hard, and when we get to retirement, we change that good lifestyle into a great lifestyle, not necessarily by spending lots of money, but doing the things that we couldn't do when we were working. Traveling a little bit more, spending a little bit more time with our spouses, and if we don't want to do that, then there's always the golf course. But spending that quality time together. And by doing so, when we then leave, we want to ensure that we leave good memories, but we also leave our families protected so that they can continue to live with dignity. And all these things we've talked about today will lead to this point here. Leading a great life, but leaving your family with a legacy of great memories and financially secure. So in this area, what are your needs? Well, the questions we often get asked is, how much tax will our family need to pay? Are my husband and my wife's financial arrangements in good order? And have we got the correct structured wills and trust framework? So what is it that we need to do? Well, if you utilize the correct trust framework, the correct wills and trust framework, we're protecting our home, our savings, our investments, our business assets. Against what? Against care home fees, potentially, marriage after death, creditors or bankruptcy attacking our estate, divorce, future generational inheritance tax. If, when my wife and I are gone, our children have to pay the least amount of tax, great. But then I don't want my grandchildren to have to pay tax on their grandparents' estate a second time. So that's generational tax planning. And of course, utilizing all the allowances. And I found that not everybody is aware of the residential nil rate band allowance and how do we utilize that. So by using the appropriate framework, we're going to protect against all these things. And I've got a little example here of one very simple thing we can do. And that is that I frequently come across when my clients, when they first come to me, most of their property is owned jointly, like this. And it doesn't matter what clever work I can assist you to put together in the estate planning and the wills and trusts. If properties are owned jointly, they have to fall to the ownership of the surviving spouse. So in my case, should I die, my wife Deepa will own all the properties that we own. And I actually don't want that for her. I want her to be secure and safe, but I don't want her to own all of my assets. And the reason is because then they can be attacked by a remarriage, bankruptcy, creditors, or if she goes into a nursing home, not only all of her money is going to go, so will mine. So this example here is simply showing, if we take the ownership of a house and we turn it into tenants in common, turn it into 2 shares, and my will says, upon my death, put my assets into a family flexible trust, up to the nil rate band of the residential nil rate band, there's a maximum allowance, and put the balance of my assets, or residual assets, into an interest in possession trust. This is a simple example I'm showing you, but let me, and what the benefit of all of that is, once again, it protects against care home fees, marriage after death, creditors, bankruptcy, divorce, generational inheritance tax planning, and it is utilizing all the maximum allowances, including the residential nil rate band. So let me show you another case study. And instead of showing you up there, I'm going to draw it up here to give you a real life example of my own affairs. Give you a real life example of my own affairs. So let me make sure, yeah, I'm in the right place. Here we go. Here is my will. And here is my wife's will. And we call them mirror wills. Ashley, can you confirm that you can see that clearly and it's all okay?
Yes, that's fine. I can see it.
Wonderful, thank you. So what my will says, the same as that slide we've just seen, is I have a family trust here. And in my family trust, family T we'll call it, upon my death, any asset, which I think it will be my home, up to the value of the nil rate band and the residential nil rate band, will fall into this trust. And the wording in this trust says that my wife Deepa has the right to reside in that property for the rest of her life. She has the right to sell that property, and obviously my share will come into this trust, her share will go into her bank account, and she has the right to ask the trustees to buy the next house for her. Because currently we live in a home that's suitable for a couple with 2 children. But as time goes by and the kids leave, and maybe if I was to die, she might find that home is a bit too big, perhaps. Or maybe she moves somebody else. But she might find the home is a bit too big. So she might want to downsize. But I'd like the value of my share of the house to fall into here, because immediately it's protected against all of those social impacts. Now, it happens to be, I think the value of my home is a little bit more than that value there. So we'll have a little bit more of my home in here. And this one's called the interest in possession, IIP trust. Right? So a little bit more of the value will fall in there. It has the same definitions of Deepa can live there for the rest of her life and it can be sold and the money must be used. But then I have other assets. We have cash on deposit. I have ISAs, etc., etc. So this can, oh, and we have some buy-to-lets. So my share can fall into here. Now, like many of you, I own a business too. So On death, there's no inheritance tax planning needed here, because on death, if your business qualifies for business property relief, it means it's inheritance tax free. So actually, I don't need a trust. It could just go to DEPA. But of course, if she was to sell it, and then she received 1.5 million, £2 million in cash, it's now in her pocket, isn't it? It's in the Lloyds Bank or the Royal Bank of Scotland or whoever we bank with. It's going to be in the bank. So what happens there? Well, it's exposed to debtors, creditors, marriage, divorce, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, nursing home fees. So what would happen is my share certificate of my business, share cert, comes in here. This is a business trust. Business trust. So my share certificate, because the day I die, the business isn't sold necessarily. The share certificate falls in there. Now, if DEPA then chooses to sell the business thereafter, my cash goes in here. And because the share certificate went in, the cash goes in inheritance tax free. So another clever angle here. And so we've got this trust structure, and then DEPA would have the same on her side. Now, what's important here, ladies and gentlemen, is that by creating this framework, I've got a comprehensive framework to protect my entire estate. But another important thing is access to the money or access to the assets. Because I wouldn't want to deprive DEPA of having the ability to live comfortably. If she needed to access money, how would she do that? Well, these trusts can obviously pay the beneficiary whatever lump sum or income, if they wish, or actually, they can actually make loans to her, which is quite interesting, isn't it? Let's say, for example, just for example, my family net worth is, let's say it's £4 million, and let's say it's 50% each. So I'm worth 2 million, DEPA's worth 2 million. And let's say, God forbid, I pass away before my time, but DEPA lives to a ripe old age. But with her money, with her assets, she does, because properties are fixed. You can't spend that. Maybe she wants to spend a little bit of my savings in addition to her own. Well, if she drew that money out as a loan over the years, and let's say she had a loan of £1 million. Well, can you see where I'm heading to? On her death, she'll leave maybe £2 million to my sons or our sons, but with £1 million debt because she's borrowed money from this estate. So now her net estate is £1 million, and the inheritance tax is payable on 1 million, not 2. So this is just to give you a flavour of why it's important to use wills, trusts, and estate planning. And for entrepreneurs like us who have moderate to sizable estates, this framework can minimise the tax payable to net revenue and leave more money for our loved ones. So we're going to talk about 8 quick winning strategies now. We're heading towards a home stretch now. Number 1, ensure all of your existing life policies, where possible, can be written in trust and should be written in trust. Number 2, the existing retirement plans you have, make sure you've had them analysed to keep the charges low and that the investments match the level of risk you're prepared to take and that you're getting the right growth for that risk. These are 2 very important things. Number 3, check that all of your pensions are inheritance tax free, and then make sure you've got them set up to pass to the loved ones and a potential into a family pension trust. Make sure that your company, number 4, make sure that your company is set up for retirement by way of ensuring you reduce the excess cash. I find on many, many occasions with my pharmacist clients who have been working for many years, they've earned good money in the pharmacy, but they've taken modest incomes out, and therefore there's a lot of money in the pharmacy. Sometimes it's cash, sometimes it's property, often it's both. So before we get to retirement, before we sell the business, we've got to bring that cash balance down. So one way of doing that is you could choose to boost your pensions, which allow us to reduce the corporation tax and put the money into a pension fund, which, by the way, a pension fund is not only a retirement vehicle. A pension fund can be used as a family trust fund. I can't go in that today, but there are alternative uses for pensions, and a lot of people don't always look at it that way, and I'd like to share that with you should you wish me to. And also look at alternative extraction strategies that qualify for business property relief. Review your wills and ensure they reflect today's wishes. That is vitally important. And ensure your wills direct the assets to the appropriate trust framework, such as business property relief trust, such as an asset preservation trust that includes a nil rate residential ban. And of course, create a lifetime cash flow and review that regularly. That puts you firmly in the driving seat to be able to live the life you want to today, comfortably and with confidence, and know tomorrow our loved ones are going to be protected too. And finally, know the difference between a life assurance agent, a financial advisor, and a financial planner. And let me share the difference with you. Before I share the difference, I want to say that all three are very valuable. There's nothing here to say that that one is better than that one and that one. It's just a question of you must establish who do you need for what job. The life assurance agent, often their job is just to sort out your life insurance. And you'll often find a life assurance agent is often a mortgage advisor who deals with all of your mortgages, but then just deals with the life assurance attached to that. So there's a valuable job there to be done. A financial advisor often can deal with the life assurance agent's job, but they will then help you invest your money into pensions and ISAs and various other products, and perhaps look at business property relief investments and all that kind of thing. And a financial planner can often do the job of a life assurance agent, a financial advisor, but a financial planner takes it to the next level, where they will look at your full set of affairs and help you work out what you can draw where and when to live comfortably. So the financial planner goes into that little bit more depth, which is incredibly valuable, because it might mean you can retire a year earlier, 5 years earlier, 10 years earlier. Or maybe you realize you could have done it a long time ago and now is the time to take action. So these are my 8 winning strategies. So what needs to happen from here? Well, we have a 5-step guide to help you establish everything you need to do. So we need to establish your current situation. We need to understand what are your needs, what are your fears. Number 3, remove your concerns, eliminate your fears and protect your life's work, which then means you can gain confidence and finally freedom to live the life you want, the way you want to live it on your terms. Knowing that you have put everything into place, knowing that you have done the best you could possibly do for ourselves as well as our families. And what have we given you today? So what we've given you today is a complete framework to move forward in a more positive fashion. And what needs to happen next is that there was an email that was sent to you today. It says Joanna Redding there, I've just seen that. It was actually Joanna Cook. We have 2 Joannas. Joanna Cook sent you an email earlier today. And in that email, we had a number of documents about PharmaWealth, a document about our client promise, etc., my CV, etc. But one of the forms was an introduction, your contact information and response sheet. And so if after today's presentation, you'd like to engage with us and you'd like us to contact you to move matters forward, then you have to complete this response sheet. Please note, we will not contact people who don't complete the response sheet, only because we don't want to be a pest. We're invited into your homes this evening to make this presentation, and therefore we'd like you to let us know that you'd like us to be invited back again to discuss your affairs. So please complete the sheet comprehensively and email it or fax it back. The fax number is not on here, but it is on the sheet. You can either email it or fax it back directly to my office. All the details are on the sheet, and then my office will be in touch with you to tell you how we move forward from there. So all that's left for me to say is thank you for your time. I think we've got a little bit of time left for questions and answers. So I'm just looking at the chat box. And what do we have here? Aren't trusts expensive to set up and run? So forgive me, I've got to go into the screen a little bit to figure that out. Right. I don't know what your version of expensive is, but I can tell you that I don't believe they're expensive. A trust can cost as little as £495 plus VAT. So I don't believe that's expensive for the work it can do. Obviously, you may have multiple trusts, so it adds up a little bit further. But the cost of what you pay for a trust is no cost at all, really, compared to the value it provides. What about the running cost of a trust? At this moment in time, there is no running cost to a trust at all. Certainly not the trust that I provide to my clients. There is no running cost. However, I must tell you, there may be a requirement to fill in a trust tax return in the future. That is a conversation that Inland Revenue are having, and we believe that will come in the future. So there may be just a simple cost of providing a tax return for a trust. I think you all know tax returns are not necessarily expensive, they're quite inexpensive. The next question.
And that's why we chipped in all their allowances to get you.
Somebody's got their microphone on. Could I ask them please to mute it? Okay, let's have a look here. I want to set up a company pension. What's the best way to do this? And who should I get advice from? I'll apply for the job. My practice, what you don't know here today, in today's conversation, is that I've been doing this job for 31 years. 31 years on the 1st of June. I will have completed 31 years in service of clients. I'm 53 years old a few days later. I'm in moderately good health. I love what I do. So I'm planning to be in service of clients for another 19 years. I'd like to do 50 years in service of clients. I really love what I do. I've got a great team of people. So my business runs really well, and I'd love to continue doing it for another 19 years. So if you have anything that you want to discuss, I call it a lifetime relationship. I'm not here to set a little something up for you and then move on to the next person. We're here to get your affairs in order and then continue to keep them in order. That's the relationship we offer. It's what we call a lifetime relationship. So if you want to set up a company pension, talk to us. I'm not going to get into how we do that, etc., because it's a long conversation. I don't know the specific circumstances, but certainly we are independent financial advisors. We are not tied to any organization, and therefore, by understanding your needs and objectives, we will take you to the marketplace to find the most suitable product and product provider for you and your family's circumstances. That's how we work. And by the way, my firm is completely fee-based. So we don't take commissions for pensions and investments and all this kind of thing. And our advice is completely impartial. So please feel free that you're going to get the complete, independent, unbiased advice. I don't see any more questions at the moment. So we've got a couple of minutes left. So what I'd just like to say is the way we work with clients is once you've completed that document to say you'd like us to contact you, and that document will ask you a few questions about what are the areas that you want us to work with. We've got 6 boxes on there already. Joe, have we got one printed at all? Yeah, Joe's just going to print one now, so we'll get it in a second. But it's got the front page is asking for your contact details, so that we know who we've got to contact and when's the best time to contact you, etc. And the back is talking about, please give us some feedback about the presentation and what areas are you interested in. So we've pre-filled 6 boxes already for people, because we find that these are the top 6 areas people are interested in. So you don't have to handwrite it, you can tick those, one of those, or as many of those as you want. Underneath that, we've got some bespoke area. So in case what those 6 boxes don't cover is not mentioned, you can fill out that thing. And then you can tell us, what are your top 3 priorities? What do you want to discuss in the time that you'll have with us that is a priority to you? And so once you've sent that back to us, my team will engage with you and they'll seek to set up an appointment. But before doing so, they'll send you a short questionnaire out, a short form out. And what that form allows us to do is for you to get out of your mind all the things that you know about your family affairs, your financial affairs, and what are your goals and objectives for the coming years. And so the team will send you all of that. If you complete that and send that back, at our very first meeting, we will be able to establish very quickly what is your current situation and what is it that you want us to do for you to be happy with our work. What is your areas of priority? And so we've thought this out very carefully. If you complete this, we both arrive at that meeting very well prepared, and we can hit that first meeting running. So we can establish what are the things that need to change in order for you to get value out of our time together. I think it's really important for advisors to understand pharmacists are incredibly busy people. My experience is many pharmacists are asset rich, but they're time poor. And so based on that, we as a firm have built our firm and our service around that you are people that need to get to the point of things quickly as we can and be given sufficient information for you to make an informed decision. So here we go. Here's the form, if you can see it there. Complete your name, your company details, whether you want to give us your company details, your home details, the phone number that you wish us to contact, you wish us to contact you on, your email address, any alternative contact details. And then here, please do rate our seminar, please. Please rate the content and the presentation. And the reason why that's important, ladies and gentlemen, is that when we get this feedback, we make it better for the next people. Today's presentation, if you think it was okay to good, it's based on what other people have told us that we need to improve on. So we're very grateful for your feedback. And then here, what are those 6 areas? Well, tell us more about wills and trusts. Wills, trusts and estate planning. Tell us more about pensions. Tell us more about investments, tax and mitigation planning, profit extraction, and anything else there. And if you, yes, we'd like a meeting. And what's the best day and time to contact you? If it's possible to keep that to Monday to Friday in business hours, I'd be very grateful, because that's the time that my staff and I work. Yeah, 8:30 to 5. If we have to call you a little later in the evening, okay, you know, occasionally we might be able to do that, but it's not common practice for us because we've all got families, so we tend to want to be at home with the families in the evening. But we've got the contact details there. And then what are the top 3 areas you want us to address? So by completing that, you can see it's quite a thorough sort of 2-page document. It allows us to get on that page quickly with you. So if we have no further questions, I'd very much like to thank you for your time today and bid you a very good evening. And I look forward to hearing from you all in due course. Please, once again, send those back to my office. If they happen to go to the NPA will forward them to us, but we prefer if they come to our office. And we look forward, for those of you who want to take this subject matter forward, we very much look forward to seeing you and speaking to you soon. In the meantime, thank you for your time and have a great evening.